Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Remember, if you love film, gaming, or television content, please consider clicking that subscribe button because it is time to talk about a film I've been waiting a long time to discuss, and that is the new feature from director Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu, Bardo, False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths. So, let's get into it. I think the first thing I want to talk about here is just the overall reception that this film has received so far. If you haven't seen it yet, I made a video talking about why I am really excited for this film, despite the fact that it received a surprisingly negative reception out of the Venice Film Festival where it premiered. And the things I heard were absolutely brutal about this being one of the most pretentious films of the year and being extremely indulgent from Iñárritu.
That's crazy. That's crazy talk!
I think if you see this film and you start to have those thoughts, I'm not going to really disagree with you if you say those things. If you don't like something that I like or vice versa, I'm not going to say you're an idiot or that you didn't get the movie because all art is interpretive and no film really fits that term more than Bardo. I had comments say that I didn't get the movie after my Blonde review. And it's like, no, I definitely understood what it meant and what it was trying to do. And the fact that I did understand it probably made me hate the film even more. So saying that is a pretty lame thing to say in my opinion if you're trying to defend the film. However, with all of that being said, I'm going to tell you straight up that I think that Bardo is one of, if not the best film of the year in my opinion. It was a really strange watch for me, and I'm going to go by some of the things that I think would hurt someone's enjoyment and tell you who this film is for, because my opinion will not be universal. The Letterboxd, Rotten Tomatoes, and IMDb scores will tell you that. I also think that this is a genre that I've never really liked until Bardo. I really don't think there is a single film from a director who is telling us their story that I have really enjoyed. I mean, that also depends on how far you're willing to stretch this kind of genre. I love Marriage Story, for example, and I know that is a very personal story for director Noah Baumbach, but to me, that really does not fit into what I'm trying to talk about here. The films that I mean are ones like Roma or Belfast. I've not seen it yet, but I think The Fabelmans will also fit into that category as well. Bardo is an exhausting watch because it manages to cram so much into its runtime, it's hard not to feel tired after watching it because it's always challenging you. I also think that if you go into this not knowing what kind of film it's going to be, you'll probably turn it off after 20 minutes. Bardo further diversifies Iñárritu's filmography because all three features I have seen from him are all completely different. Birdman and The Revenant are really challenging films in their own rights, but they are far more accessible than Bardo. I think this film is for those who enjoy something a little more interpretive, and then I think you can really withstand the endurance test in a way of all of these challenging ideas that Iñárritu presents, and understand from the get-go that this is Iñárritu trying a more experimental form of filmmaking. I think the trailer subtly told us that. The first trailer played the song I Am the Walrus from the Beatles, which was a song made during an era where the Beatles themselves were trying something a little more experimental with their music, and Iñárritu approaches a similar thing here with his filmmaking. I also think that Bardo maybe has the most accurate title of the year. A False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths is exactly what this is. Bardo is Iñárritu's most personal film, but it does dive into some straight up fiction at times. The protagonist does share some experiences with Iñárritu, but it's still a character in a movie at the end of the day, and the film really explores some fantastical elements. He has always been a filmmaker I have highly respected. I think Birdman is a straight up masterpiece and was one of those pioneer films for me, as it was one of the few movies I saw that really exposed me to what Martin Scorsese would say is real cinema. And it really created that passion for films that I have now. Anyway, I feel like I've said a whole lot about the movie without actually reviewing it yet. So I think firstly, I want to talk about the themes that Bardo presents first. I feel like there may have been a couple that went over my head a little, but the main ones I picked up on were the ability to move on from tragedy an identity crisis due to being someone who has spent a large portion of their life in both the US and Mexico, existentialism, and the selfishness that was required to become that successful, as well as being someone who lives up to their parents' expectations. I know that really does sound like a whole lot to cover in just one film, and I think that may have been a reason why people had a hard time enjoying this, because they felt like it may have been a little too unfocused and is taking on way too much. I can definitely agree with that to an extent, but that is the reason that this has such a long runtime. Iñárritu actually takes the time to address each one of these properly, utilizing a combination of dialogue and surrealism that is full to the brim when it comes to metaphors. I think the first two acts in particular were really clicking with me the entire time. The process it took to gradually become more focused was one I found to be extremely satisfying, and I surprised myself in a lot of ways. There are quite a few things that this film does that I would truly despise in any other film. Both Men and Blonde included something similar, and I hated it in both of those films. In Bardo, it worked really well to me because it wasn't done for shock factor or to be artistic for vanity's sake. It serves a purpose to a greater theme. It is a bizarre choice, and I think Iñárritu really does throw everything at you here, and whether that works for you or not is completely up to your personal enjoyment, but for me, I was surprised that it kind of worked. I think technically that this might be the best film of the year. I knew from the get-go that this was definitely something I didn't want to see on Netflix on my TV at home, because that is where it's going to release eventually. I wanted to see this on the big screen, and I'm glad I did because it makes a huge difference here. I've been waiting a long time for a 2022 film to deliver us this level of craft. The cinematography is definitely my favorite of the year as well, and I don't think it will be topped unless Wes Anderson just suddenly releases his next film this year, because in my opinion, I think he is unmatched in terms of his directing style. However, Bardo utilizes some really great long takes. There's one in particular during a dance scene, and as someone who really loves dance scenes, I loved Iñárritu's approach to that kind of sequence. We also have the performances, which I firstly want to credit Iñárritu again for. A director's job is not to hold the camera, but to provide everyone on set with clear direction and instructions on what that vision is and help them realize that for the director. And I think he did that brilliantly because the cast is just so committed to help realize this pure vision on display. The only thing I've ever seen lead actor Daniel Kaluuya in previously was Memoria, and honestly he left pretty much no impression on me, and I completely forgot about him until this came along. I just want to say, I will not forget about him now. His performance in Bardo deserves as much respect as Michael Keaton's one in Birdman. He is committed to the role and does not let up once. The supporting cast is also very great to watch, but this is very much a character study. So Daniel Kaluuya is pretty much on screen throughout the entire runtime, so he really needs to deliver, and thankfully he does. What also makes Iñárritu's story so compelling to me is the fact that this is not a clear-cut black and white authentic tale of the filmmaker's journey. Bardo explores fantasy and manages to dive into both realism and surrealism at the same time and take some real creative risks, because the film really isn't as pretentious as you may think. Now, I'm not saying either Roma or Belfast are either. They are authentic, but I just didn't really enjoy watching them. Bardo acknowledges this, and Iñárritu is willing to take us to a vulnerable place while having real creative freedom to do what he wants here, and I think for a filmmaker of this caliber, he really pulled it off. For more further proof of how Iñárritu isn't as arrogant as some media outlets are making him out to be, after all of the criticism, he was willing to cut out another 15 minutes out of the film to make it a little easier on audiences. That is not something you really ever see, and you have to appreciate the fact that he's willing to acknowledge some shortcomings and fix them. I don't know if I saw the full version or the shortened one, but I'm pretty sure I didn't get out of the theater until around 3 hours after it started, so I think I got the longer one, to be honest, but I don't know. To be honest, I think there could have been an opportunity to maybe cut another 20 minutes out, which would knock it to a still fairly long 2 hours and 20 minutes. And it honestly would have been a little less exhausting to me because that does hurt rewatchability in some ways. But I still think I would really be willing to see this again because I was just in awe of everything that was on display here. And I can't really say that enough here. Overall, I think Bardo is really special and unlike anything that you or I have really ever seen. Will everyone like this? Absolutely not, but that comes with the territory when a film has so much creative freedom and takes so many risks like this does. And I really think that if this is the film that works for you, it really will work for you because that's what happened with me. This throws a lot at you, and I have never been more tired after watching a film from just purely what it gives you. I think the craft though is completely unmatched this year, and I highly recommend Bardo if this looks like it's going to be your kind of thing. Also, please see this in a theater if you can. This is a film that you should watch on the biggest screen possible because it really does make a difference. I'm going to give Bardo a 5 out of 5 because this review score is based off my enjoyment and my personal opinion. The criticisms I provide are more for the audience and everyone who is going to see this film. But to me, they didn't bother me as much as I would have thought. I was a little exhausted, like I said. But at the end of the day, just reflecting on the film, it's one that I will be consistently thinking about because of how much it threw at me and how much I really enjoyed and engaged with. Anyway, thank you so much for watching the video. I would say that this may be my most anticipated video, but I never know when a video is going to go off for thousands of views or just completely flop, so who knows here. But in terms of film content, this is this type of stuff that I really enjoy doing. As fun as it is to review massive budget films like ones in the MCU, the ones that have this level of craft, vision, and hopefully inspire some good conversations are ones I really like to talk about because it is really hard to find someone going, hey, I'm so excited for Bardo, but I know you're out there and I appreciate you. With all that said, tell me what you think about Bardo in the comments below. Please keep it respectful. I am more than willing to have a real conversation with someone who disagrees with me as long as they are respectful. And I think we can have some really great conversations because of it. Remember to like and subscribe and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.